Today, I would like to talk to you about a topic that is very important to me, the Muppets. The Muppets is one of my favorite media properties, and I will find any excuse to talk about them. Unfortunately, what I want to talk to you about today is probably the worst thing to ever have the Muppets name attached to it. I'm sure most of you are aware that the Muppets are owned by Disney, who acquired the property in 2004. Disney actually intended to purchase all of the Jim Henson Company in 1989. Unfortunately, the passing of Muppets creator Jim Henson caused those plans to fall through. Though, as we know, more than a decade later, Disney would purchase the Muppets and Baron the Big Blue House, but not the company outright. The first production release post-Disney was 2005, The Muppets Wizard of Oz, and it's awful. Easily the worst thing with the Muppets name attached to it, in my opinion at least. Now, the Muppets plus public domain property is a pretty winning formula. Like the Muppets Christmas Carol, Muppets Treasure Island are perfect examples of this. Plus, The Wizard of Oz is one of the most beloved films and most adapted stories out there. So a Muppet adaptation almost makes too much sense. I love the Muppets, The Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite movies, and I love the books, so in theory this should be my favorite thing ever. However, like I said, this is probably the worst Muppets movie. It premiered on ABC as a made-for-TV film, so obviously the budget will be lacking compared to a theatrical release, but the issues don't even relate to that and instead run much deeper. So instead of just a breakdown divided into different parts, I thought it would be fun to just do a rundown of the entire movie. So be warned, spoilers for Muppets Wizard of Oz follow. The Muppets Wizard of Oz stars Ashanti as Dorothy, and that's our first red flag. Now, Ashanti is primarily known as a singer, but she has done a few acting gigs. This is probably the worst portrayal of Dorothy there has been, or at least the worst I've personally seen. If you've seen her in things like John Tucker Must Die, or that one episode of Buffy, you probably know that she's not exactly an especially great actress. And I'm gonna be honest, her acting really drags this down a lot.
I think I liked it better when you couldn't talk. You want me to go in there?
Absolutely.
No way, you just fried that guy's head off. Check it out, your little show's about to be canceled.
Allegedly, Hilary Duff and Jessica Simpson also auditioned for the role of Dorothy, so they were clearly going for someone who could sing, or sing. I definitely would be interested in seeing the alternate universe where either of them got cast as Dorothy, because the songs in this were clearly tailored to a Y2K R&B singer like Ashanti. I just wish they put more effort into finding someone who could, act as well. I don't know. Brandy. Beyonce hadn't even released B-Day yet, so I'm sure she wasn't out of the project's budget by this point. But no, we get Ashanti, who, let me be clear, I enjoy as a musical artist, just not as an actor.
You're king of the beasts. If some critter gives you attitude, all you gotta do is let out a big roar. Trash. Pretty big talk coming from a hog on a hog.
As is standard in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy lives in Kansas with her Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, who in this is played by Queen Latifah. That's not really important, I just wanted to point it out. Something that is interesting in this iteration of Dorothy is that she wants to be a famous singer. I also assume she's supposed to be older than the traditional portrayals of Dorothy, who are normally children, obviously. But yeah, she lives in a small town in Kansas where instead of working on a farm, she works at her family's restaurant. But the important thing is that she desperately wants to get out of Kansas.
But this is big. I mean, if they like me, I could get out of Kansas and become somebody.
Now, this film opens with a music video, and I was really excited for a second because I thought all the musical sequences were just going to have music video credits for some reason. But no, it was just this one. It's a dream sequence of Dorothy, so it was all fake. I mean, unfortunately. We also see that there's tension with Dorothy and her Aunt Em, as Dorothy has dreams of stardom and escaping Kansas, while Aunt Em is much more grounded and focused on running the business. We learn that Dorothy is planning to audition for the Muppets, who for some reason are having an American Idol-style cross-country tour to find their next singer or something. Unfortunately, due to her work commitments, Dorothy is late for the audition, but she does manage to get Kermit her demo CD, and Miss Piggy makes a Napster joke of all things.
You think maybe you can listen to my demo?
No time. We'll have to get your song off Napster.
Back home, Aunt Em and Dorothy have another fight, and this is where we learn that this version of Toto is a prawn that was going to be used in a dish at the diner. And if you know anything about the Muppets, I'm sure you know where this is going. I'll save my thoughts on that later. Anyways, we get to the familiar Wizard of Oz beat of a tornado making its way to Kansas, and we don't get any scene of the family being alerted of the incoming tornado or anything. Just a random jump cut to them pretty calmly walking to the storm shelter. Then somehow Dorothy realizes she forgot Toto despite seemingly having ample opportunity to leave with him, and decides to go save her best friend instead of going to the storm shelter for safety. And you all know what happens next. The tornado picks up the trailer and transports Dorothy and Toto to Oz. Something that I did find fun was the Kansas scenes were more desaturated before becoming vibrant and full of life once we got to Oz, in tribute to the movie. Dorothy's trailer of course lands in Munchkinland, but before that we find out that Toto has assumed the form of Pepe the Prawn. Now, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but I hate Pepe. I don't want to be bold and call him outright my least favorite Muppet, but he is a top contender. I think what makes this more offensive to me is that there is a Muppet who is literally a dog. Now, I know that Ralph was allegedly the Muppet that was most personal to Jim Henson, and they did retire him for a little bit after his death, but by this point they're regularly using Ralph again, and I don't see why they couldn't use him. I know Pepe became immediately popular after his introduction in the late 90s, but honestly, his appearance is one of the things that really ages this film the most. I'm just personally not a fan of his whole endlessly horny shtick, and it gets brought up a lot in this film. A lot. They clearly just wanted Pepe to have a prominent role in this film, so that's why we have what we do, to my disappointment. But with that being said, enough talk about Pepe. Back to Munchkinland. In this, the Munchkins are rats and are led by Rizzo, which is fine by me. I like Rizzo. Despite his questionable handling of food establishment, he's like a solid B-tier Muppet for me. Of course, we have the Wicked Witch of the East die via house, or I guess trailer in this case. And honestly, this may be the most brutal death, both in terms of the Wizard of Oz and the Muppets.
Wow, this is a lot heavier than I...
But with the Witch of the East dead, Dorothy is gifted the magic silver slippers by Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. And in a fun twist, all four of the witches are portrayed by Miss Piggy. Now, I know this is mostly out of necessity because, let's be real, the well of prominent female Muppets is not exactly deep. You have Janice, Camilla, Denise from the 2015 TV show, and none of them are exactly star players. So yeah, even though it's because they really had no other option, I do think having all the witches be portrayed by the same performer is a fun gimmick, and honestly one I'm surprised hasn't been employed before. I also want to talk about this film's relationship to the book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz versus a 1939 film adaptation, which at this point is obviously more famous than the books themselves. Now, a lot of the most famous elements that people associate with Oz are actually specific to the film and are under copyright, like the ruby slippers, the specific look of the witch, etc. Of course, the books are in the public domain, so in the end, this is more so an adaptation of the original book than it is of the movie, which I'm fine with. It's like the movie's one redeeming trait and puts it more in line with stuff like Christmas Carol and Treasure Island. Anyways, Dorothy tells Glinda about her dreams of being a star, and so Glinda sends her off to the Emerald City to find the Wizard of Oz who can make all of her dreams come true, because remember, in this, Dorothy actively wanted to leave Kansas. I do like Dorothy having actual ambitions and goals outside of just returning home, even if wanting to be a famous singer is like the most early 2000s character goal ever. But we then transition into more standard Wizard of Oz fare as Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion, who are portrayed by Kermit, Gonzo, and Fozzie respectively. The Scarecrow is pretty standard when it comes to character traits, but I don't really like the idea of Kermit being the Scarecrow because brainlessness isn't really a trait I associate with Kermit. Granted, it is because they wanted Kermit to get as much screen time as possible because he's Kermit the Frog, so I can't be too upset by it. Gonzo and Fozzie, however, are pretty good fits for their characters, and I actually kind of like the changes made to their respective roles. In this, the Tin Man is known as the Tin Thing, and has the horrific backstory of being turned into the Tin Thing by the Wicked Witch because he was in love with Camilla. And because the witch saw that as a distraction, she turned him into the heartless Tin Thing, incapable of love. And the Cowardly Lion is still cowardly, obviously, but it's because he has stage fright while wanting to be a stand-up comedian, which I find charming. While doing research for this, I found that the Muppets have made numerous references to The Wizard of Oz before, apparently because it was allegedly Jim Henson's favorite movie, the most notable being The Muppets Go to the Movies, which featured Gonzo and Fozzie in the same roles, but also had Miss Piggy as Dorothy and Scooter as the Scarecrow. And then the Muppet Babies did a segment featuring Piggy, Kermit, Gonzo, and Fozzie all playing the same roles. That's just a fun fact. So yeah, nothing really out of the norm here, but I do need to point out this one moment after the gang meets the Tin Thing because it may be one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen in a Muppets production.
Hey, what do these do?
Nothing. They're my nipples.
We then get a pretty standard Muppet musical number about how they all may have things they have missing in their lives, but as long as they have each other, they'll be okay. And after this, they find themselves in the Poppy Fields, which in this film is a nightclub where the Electric Mayhem perform. The gang still falls into a slumber, but otherwise doesn't serve much of a purpose than just another obstacle. And I guess a way to shoehorn in the Electric Mayhem, who, I need to be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of. Anyways, Dorothy is revived by the Tin Thing, who apparently has defibrillators built into him, and we're treated to this.
I'm up. I'm fully up.
But after this, they finally reach the Emerald City.
And who are you?
We're friends of Dorothy.
Right.
Before they can meet the wizard, however, they need to give Dorothy a makeover because this is 2005, and to accomplish this, they use some kind of makeover machine, and after her first step in the machine, Dorothy inexplicably turns into Kelly Osbourne. Yeah. But everyone hates her new look, so she goes back into the machine and comes out in this awful outfit. Like, it's so hideous, and why is it just shades of green? I get that it's the Emerald City, but come on, at least make it like a one-tone dress or something instead of a two-piece outfit in two horribly different shades of green. I hate this look so much, and like the hair is like easily the most like early 2000s hairstyle they could have given. I need to move on from this. And with that, they can meet the wizard, but they do have to meet him one-on-one, and in a move that's accurate to the book, the wizard appears in different forms for each member of the group. Despite that being a neat touch, it's offset by some truly horrible CGI, and I know that we're working on a TV budget here, but come on. The Jim Henson Company is known for its groundbreaking visual effects. They didn't even use puppets. I guess you could make the argument that it's supposed to look artificial considering the nature of the wizard, but that doesn't negate the fact that it just looks ugly. Especially the part with Gonzo's version of the wizard, which I don't even know how to get into, so I'll just show it. One of the biggest complaints this movie got is that it was too mature for younger viewers, but I can't imagine where they got that idea from.
How do you know?
And does she have huge floppy wings like this?
Look at the size of those wings.
Of course, the wizard refuses to help them unless they kill the Wicked Witch of the West and return her magic eye to him, which allows her to see all. And so we finally get to the debut of the Wicked Witch of the West, who, let us remember, was not the overarching antagonist of the original book, but more so the main obstacle of one particular section. Now, in a twist that I found fun, the Flying Monkeys is actually the name of a biker gang that the Wicked Witch is the leader of, and she does have an eye patch like the original book. So the gang makes their way to the witch's lair, and of course she sees them approaching and ambushes them with probably the weakest musical number of the special. And then, and I kid you not, it ends with the Flying Monkeys literally tearing Scarecrow and Tin Thing apart. There's this one scene in particular where you literally see the Tin Thing's decapitated head lying there as Scarecrow's straw is just thrown all around him. The Wicked Witch captures Dorothy, and I'm being fully serious when I say that she attempts to make a snuff film where she kills Dorothy on camera.
But I can't commit myself to just one woman's, okay? I hope we can still be friends.
You just told me to tell you.
Yes. I know you're feeling hurt, I understand.
But have no fear, because the lion saves them after escaping his prison by telling jokes. And so, with Dorothy free, she and the Wicked Witch get ready to fight, and then...
And then, just as Dorothy and the Wicked Witch charge at each other, bam! Blowout fight scene.
I have to be honest here, this is the part that broke me. I know celebrity cameos are kind of the Muppets thing, but really, a Quentin Tarantino cutaway gag in the middle of your climactic fight scene? I don't want to linger on this too much, so I'll just give a quick rundown. Tarantino pitches Kermit his ideas for the final battle, which are too violent and or too expensive to make for this film. The end. There are also inexplicably Dutch angles in this scene, giving Quentin Tarantino a truly menacing aura as he hovers over poor Kermit. The fight ends rather quickly though, as Dorothy kicks the witch into a bath of what she thinks is bottled water but actually includes tap water. And because the witch is allergic to tap water, this happens.
I'm not melting. I'm getting skinny. I'm getting skinny.
I did say this was the 2000s. And then we get another horrifying death of a wicked witch. My god, it's like she opened the Ark of the Covenant. So as a recap, we are so far at 3 horrifying Muppet deaths in this hour-and-a-half family movie. But with the witch dead, now the flying monkeys have no leader, and it's revealed that the wicked witch was controlling them with an enchanted biker hat. Dorothy then takes ownership of the cap and storms into the Emerald City with her new biker gang lackeys, where it's of course revealed that the wizard was never real and was all one giant ruse. And then we see the real wizard, played by Jeffrey Tambor. Thatcher aged well, but in true Wizard of Oz fashion, he agrees to help all of our heroes with their desires, and he does it all on live TV, complete with what I assume is a green carpet premiere. Which of course ends with a Michael Eisner joke from Pepe, because this is Disney circa 2005.
Now, listen, Eisner baby, if you think we're going for that deal, you're out of your Mickey mind, okay?
The wizard bestows upon our heroes his gifts, and that includes a gold microphone attached to a chain for Lion. For the Scarecrow, the wizard literally stuffs his head with bran flakes, which of course requires the Scarecrow's head to once again become detached from his body. This looks like a cross between body horror and someone's fetish. And for the Tin Thing, he gives him a heart, which just amounts to throwing one of those Valentine's Day candy hearts into his chest cavity. But Tin Thing does get to reunite with Camilla, and I was excited to see some genuine heart in this, and then of course they ruined it.
Look who's filled out! I don't mean chubby, I mean in a nice... Would you excuse us?
Dorothy is about to perform for Oz and make all of her dreams come true, but then she stops, realizing that what she wanted all along was to return home. Unfortunately, since this is the Wizard of Oz, he cannot do that, so our heroes have to travel back to Munchkinland where they meet Tatty-Poo, the Good Witch of the North. Miss Piggy again, of course. And of course, Dorothy finds the shoes have had the power to return home all along, which sure goes over well with her. But she does use the shoes to go home, but not before transferring leadership of the Flying Monkeys.
The monkey gets the hat?
The monkey gets a hat?
The monkey gets the hat.
Dorothy finally makes it back to Kansas, where it's revealed that she did get the Muppets job and officially goes out on tour with them, closing us out with a song. The end. Let me be clear, this was a pretty dire viewing experience. There is endless potential to a Muppets Wizard of Oz, but this one just takes wrong turn after wrong turn. This film has a lot of misplaced adult humor, and I don't mean in the way that jokes that would be funny for children but adults will actually understand. No, it's just straight up jokes that wouldn't be out of place in an actual adult sitcom. Like, jokes that made me pretty uncomfortable at some points. I showed most of them here. There's also this pretty mean-spirited tone that feels out of place for the Muppets. It's kind of like the issue with the 2015 show before they tried to turn that ship around. It was the mid-2000s, so that was just kind of the vibe, but the cynical tone just did not work for me. And don't even get me started on the celebrity cameos. Again, I know that's kind of the Muppets thing, but the Quentin Tarantino experience made me want to walk out, and I was watching this from my computer. And I don't want to be too mean to Ashanti, but she really was miscast in this role. The reason films like Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island work was because they were anchored by strong actors who were giving it their all. And no disrespect to Ashanti, but she's not exactly on the acting level of Michael Caine or Tim Curry. I also think the difference between this and the other Muppet adaptations is that the other two projects I talked about still take their source material seriously. The Muppets Wizard of Oz almost feels like a Wizard of Oz parody in some aspects, and that doesn't really vibe with what the Muppets are all about. Yes, the Muppets often like to poke fun at what's happening, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of heart and honesty to a Muppets project. And again, they commit fully to what's happening around them. The fact that it's starring the Muppets is really only circumstantial. At the end of the day, both Christmas Carol and Treasure Island were fully faithful adaptations that just happened to star the Muppets. While The Wizard of Oz just feels like, oh, we're starring the Muppets, they felt because it's starring the Muppets, it has to be as unserious as possible. Now, this film came at a kind of a weird transitionary period for the Muppets, as Disney was still figuring out how to utilize the property. And arguably, they still haven't figured that out yet. It's not any sort of hot take to say that the Muppets aren't exactly a high priority for Disney, but this was right after the acquisition was finalized, so you'd think that Disney would want to do as much as possible with their shiny new toy. Obviously, there have been some high points like the 2011 movie or the Muppets Haunted Mansion, but there have been just as many, if not more, misfires. This actually was the last Muppet film before the 2011 one, so for more than half a decade, this was the last major production to have the Muppets name attached to it. Unless you count Studio DC Almost Live, which, of course I do. I do think we deserve more Muppet movie adaptations, and it's kind of astounding that with the launch of Disney Plus and the need to fill it with content, we haven't seen that. We could go back to the old formula and have something like, I don't know, Muppet Pride and Prejudice, Muppet Sleepy Hollow. Heck, you could even just do another Muppets Wizard of Oz. I'm sure not a lot of people would complain. Or take a property Disney owns and add the Muppets. The Muppets Avengers, Muppets Star Wars, Muppet, I don't know, Smart House. Oh, and make sure the people behind the scenes actually care about the Muppets. That's why the 2011 movie and Muppet Haunted Mansion work so well. And with that, I'm sure that's more than anyone has talked about the Muppets Wizard of Oz, or at the least the most anyone would care to hear about it. See you next time, and until then, I'll be writing a treatment of Muppets Little Women starring BB Rexa.
Hi-ya to you too.
And a sea of crimson blood! All done in the classic Japanese anime style, like for the kids?
Ashanti. Yeah.
I've noticed that in most of these that I've made so far, I am wearing a hat, and the next one I have planned also involves like a wig. I don't know if people think I like have hair or not. I do. I just have this Kermit hat that I think was funny to wear, even though it fits really awkwardly. Like, it's like kind of fits like a newsboy cap, but at the same time, it's like obviously styled like a baseball cap. I don't know. Should I have worn this? It's too late now.